Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about The Swarm. The Swarm is a French horror/thriller movie that tells the story of a woman named Virginie, a single mother and locust farmer who's trying her best to make ends meet for her and her family, but she has a hard time in doing so because her locusts aren't breeding as much as she would like them to, which results in her not being able to sell as much as she would like to, which results in a lower income altogether. One day, she accidentally discovers that the locusts respond much better to blood than they do to the grass and water that she was feeding them previously. This gives them more energy, and thus they're able to breed and multiply at a much more exponential rate. So as a result, Virginie is able to sell a lot more of them once she discovers this, and this allows her to afford more necessities and luxuries for her family. This, however, comes at a cost. The locusts end up becoming bloodthirsty to the point that they'll attack and kill anything that they see on sight so that they can drink their blood. And this is what results in the main dilemma of the story, as Virginie tries to hide the dark secret behind the locust farm while expanding it at the same time so that she can provide for her family financially. So it seems that a lot of review outlets are classifying this movie in a lot of different genres. Some say that it's a fantasy drama, and others say that it's a straight-up horror movie. I personally think it doesn't quite fit either of those genres. I see it as more of a thriller that has dramatic elements behind it, and all of those elements are upheld very well by the characters within the story. Virginie was definitely the best character in the whole movie. Without going into too much detail about her character, I like how the filmmakers were able to balance her role as both protagonist and antagonist at the same time. At the beginning, we can clearly see that she does what she does for the sake of her family's well-being, with the movie going so far as to explain that not only is she a single mother, but she is a widow on top of that, so she has a lot on her plate to deal with throughout her daily life. However, once the locusts start to increase in number, that's when her focus shifts away from her family a bit and more towards not only the money that comes from selling the locusts, but the locusts themselves. Her character undergoes a very subtle but disturbing transformation throughout the story as she gradually begins to lose her humanity while also developing a closer affinity with the locusts. This constantly puts her at odds with her family, specifically her daughter and her son, and it was really interesting to see how it all played out on camera. Speaking of family, I thought that the daughter Laura made for a good character foil for Virginie as well. She highlighted a lot of her traits, both her best ones as a mother and her worst ones as a provider. She wants nothing to do with the locust farm to begin with, so she made for a reliable and believable source of conflict. There's also the son named Gaston, who I personally didn't find very interesting in this movie other than the fact that his name is Gaston, who's one of my favorite Disney characters of all time. But aside from that, he just doesn't have a whole lot else going for him personality-wise. There is a sort of interesting thing that happens about halfway through the story whenever they try to look for his pet goat and it ends up getting eaten by locusts, but other than that, that's it. Going back to what I said earlier about this movie being a thriller, I didn't find this movie to be quite as scary as I initially thought it would be, although there were some great horror elements throughout, and it was fantastic as far as suspense was concerned. It's very much one of those slow burn types of narratives that takes its time to have its events unfold, so you have to be in the right mood to watch that kind of story. Otherwise, you might end up being bored to death wondering when something is going to happen. Personally though, I found this movie to be anything but boring. The more tense scenes in this movie are complemented extremely well by an awesome ambient soundtrack and very crafty camera shots which emphasize the degree of isolation that this family undergoes on a regular basis. Now, the characters aren't totally isolated throughout the entire movie. There are some characters that visit the family at their farm from time to time, and they do take trips out to the city now and then, but those things that I mentioned earlier, the creepy camera shots and the ambient soundtrack, those things follow them wherever the characters go. So throughout the entire movie, there's this constant feeling of unease throughout the story that I felt really added to the thrills of it all. Make no mistake though, the locusts are definitely the main highlight of the show. What I like most about them in this movie is they're not necessarily treated like zombies in the sense that they're constantly killing characters off one by one. Rather, the movie takes its time building up to those moments as well as setting up their predatory behavior, which I felt added to the horror of it all when they do inevitably cause some bloodshed. Another thing that I liked about the locusts is how there's very little CGI that's used when it comes to presenting them. In most cases, whenever you see a locust on screen, it's a genuine, real, live locust, even if it happens to be breeding with or eating another locust on camera. The scenes where swarms of locusts appear to devour everything in their path are inevitably produced with the help of computer-generated effects, although I don't really mind that all that much, and for what it's worth, I thought that the special effects in this movie were pretty well done. This being said though, there are some inconsistencies and other weird things involving the locusts in this movie that I found to be problematic. They don't really ruin the movie for me per se, but they do bog its enjoyability down for me a little bit. The The locusts don't have any rhyme or reason at all when it comes to their attacks. There's lots of moments throughout the story where they have ample opportunity to attack something that's clearly in front of them and vulnerable, but oftentimes instead they end up waiting for a predetermined amount of time to pass, and then they end up attacking whatever living thing's in front of them, and sometimes they don't attack at all. There's one really weird example in this regard where an innocent bystander is going around the family farm at night trying to find his lost dog, and he ends up going inside one of the domes where the locusts are being kept in and opens up one of their containers. And instead of being devoured on the spot right then and there, instead the locust just completely coasts past him like he doesn't exist, and they end up chilling out on the ceiling above him. That was bad enough, but 2 minutes later, when another character goes inside that exact same dome wondering why the door to it is open, he ends up finding the first character before him dead on the ground being eaten by locusts, and that made no sense to me. I was like, what? I thought he was fine. The locust flew past him. I thought everything was going to be okay. Now all of a sudden he's dead? I just felt like a lot of the time the locusts weren't behaving like I thought locusts would be in this story. And I know that this is a movie and you're not supposed to be taking it too seriously considering that the locusts are bloodthirsty after all, but the inconsistencies in their swarm behavior were disappointing to the point of being flat out annoying. And I have to say, as much as I enjoy the build-up leading to it, the ending to this movie was totally unfulfilling. It was rushed, ridiculous, and nonsensical to the point of being laughable. It's unfortunate because I do enjoy 90% of the rest of this movie story, but the ending just flips the whole thing over on its head. There's just too many things going on at once for me to process, combined with the already problematic behavior of the swarm, which I talked about earlier. I can see the direction that the filmmakers were taking with the ending, but I still thought the way it unfolded was illogical and poorly thought out. Overall though, in spite of the inconsistent animal behavior and the crazy rushed ending, The Swarm proves to be a great slow burn thriller. If you're looking for a thriller on the slower side of things that takes its time building up suspense and you can handle some weird bits that crop up in its story now and then, I think that you definitely enjoy watching this movie. The Swarm tells an interesting story of sacrifice and greed and how far one will go to provide for their family, and even though the destination didn't live up to expectations, the journey proved to be more than fulfilling. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of The Swarm. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the animated musical, Vivo. Bye bye!